think that's a good idea.
Hey, people on the podcast, guess that sound. Good luck.
Those orphans' tears.
Oh my god.
Hello, and welcome back to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast. I'm Christian, a video guy.
And I'm Ben, an animator guy.
If you couldn't tell, we're guys, and we're not the same guy.
Despite our voices, we're actually different people.
One of us is married, though, and the other one is Marie Antoinette. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Well, speaking of you being married, Christian,
It's me.
Yeah, I believe you just finished a video about your honeymoon, which we talked about in the last episode.
I did. My wife, wow, that's crazy to say. My wife and I had a great time. We went to Thailand. We did a couple of fun things. Nothing too crazy, but I thought, hey, why not turn it into a little portfolio piece, because I'm all about self-promotion.
So where can people go to check out the video?
So I actually recently just put a couple things up on a new YouTube channel. If you type in, and because I'm not famous, if you type in Christian Davis, Thailand 2019 / help me, no joke, it will be one of the first results.
Even with the / and the help me.
I tested it. I think it was on top, but you never know. YouTube's an amazing place, full of lots of amazing things. Actually, most of it's garbage, including my video. You should check it out.
Well, while you're on YouTube, the podcast that we have today is with the fantastic animator and 2D artist, Alex Flores.
Whoa.
And here's the YouTube part where it comes in. The questions that you guys asked her via Instagram, we have as a video up for you, so you can see her answer them yourself.
You better watch it, or I'm coming for you. I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there. Just I'm coming, so better watch it.
I know what you can do right now.
Listen to the podcast.
That was it. Enjoy.
Or I'm coming for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Up and Coming Artist Podcast. I'm Ben, an animator.
Alex Flores.
Hey! Christian is not on the podcast today because of other engagements, as in he's engaged and is out with his fiancée, I imagine. So I am here with someone that I have wanted to get on the podcast for so long, who already introduced herself. And she is a 3D animator, illustrator, character designer, vendor, as in tabling at epic events, and one of the nicest people you ever meet in animation, Alex Flores.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here too, because I think I've been trying to get you on for like 6 months.
Has it really been that long?
I don't know. It feels like it. It's too long. So, I listed off a few things that you've done. Mm-hmm. But how would you describe yourself as an artist?
Shoot, that's I've never been asked that before, actually. But I'd like to describe myself as a 3D animator in training, as well as a graphic artist. I like to do a lot of stuff on the side, like drawing people's characters and doing sketches and just anything like digital, really.
That's awesome. So you were talking about drawing people's characters, doing illustrations, and doing it digitally. So is that like Photoshop, or is that what do you use?
I use Photoshop. I also use a Japanese program called Paint Tool Sai.
Oh.
Yeah, it's I really enjoy it because it's got something in there called a line stabilizer. So if you're like me and you've got shaky hands, it's just perfect because you can just crank that baby up and just go as slow as you want. So that's primarily what I use, and then I export stuff to Photoshop.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of different art, which I kind of alluded to in your description. We heard about Photoshop. We heard about your digital art, 3D animation. But what got you started in art?
You know, when I was growing up, my dad really just liked drawing. He's a fireman, so I guess at the fire station, it's a recurring thing to just draw all the time. Like when you walk in there, I saw a lot of his friends just draw a bunch of caricatures of each other just sitting there on the whiteboard and things like that. So he got really good at that. So when I was younger, he used to just draw me pictures of like Santa Claus or animals and things like that. So he really got me into it. And I was like, I really want to learn how to draw just like my dad. So I was that kid who sat on their kitchen floor and just looked at picture books and just copied stuff out of the coloring books.
So was that just like pencils or was that crayons back then?
It was the cheap Crayola markers.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah,
the ones where like you'd probably breathe the scent of them too much and
the good stuff right there.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So you learned from your dad, and then when was it that you were thinking, okay, maybe this is something that I want to do as a career or in college?
It wasn't until I saw Lilo and Stitch in theaters back when that came out. I didn't really know that was a job. Mm. So after I saw that movie, I was like, I didn't know you can do something like that as a career. So after that, I started to look into what animation could be. Like, I wanted to work at Disney. Like, I'm sure so many people have said that, but it's like, Disney is the place I gotta be. Yeah. So Lilo and Stitch like got me into it. That one and Brother Bear, I think, because those two were the ones that really sparked my interest. And yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was it about then you think that sparked your interest and then got you to realize like, oh wait, this is a job?
I specifically remember just like loving Stitch as a character design in a whole. I think that actually like streamlined my interests like all together. Like I love aliens and I love monsters and stuff like that. So whenever I would draw things, I tried to like draw Stitch, just like I don't know, a cat, but as Stitch. So that was my thing. I really wanted to work for Disney, like I mentioned. And I had been following like Disney as a career like ever since I think middle school. Like I looked into colleges that you could get into for it. I was like probably way too invested in it as a kid. Like
That's
really,
awesome.
I remember like going up to my mom like in her bedroom. Mom, animators make this much money a year. See, that's good. I can make that. I can make it work. So yeah, I was like always like trying my best to prepare myself for that because my mom didn't want me to do animation. As soon as I told her, I mean, she's like, you can do your own thing, but she really tried to steer me in the direction of graphic design. I think at the time she's like, oh, it's more job stability or whatever. But so I really tried to convince her that I could do animation. But when I found out that Disney had laid off all of their 2D animators, I think it was like 2012 or 2013 or something like that, I was like, oh shoot, that's my dream job right there at Disney. So they're not doing 2D anymore. So I started to look into like the 3D side of it and really like try to do research on the 3D.
Wow. You know, well, obviously sad that people are getting laid off, but cool
right,
that you
yeah.
like rolled with it. You know what I mean? Where you're like, okay, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to pursue it even though it's not what I've known. I think that's really awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm thinking back on it because I remember reading over your questions and I'm like, I was like 12 and I'm like, oh gosh, I gotta look for another job and I hadn't, like, you know, I'm like, I hadn't even been in there yet. That's the part that cracks me up. I'm like, okay.
Wow, that's so awesome. Yeah. You're ahead of the game.
12-year-old me is like, well, that's not an option anymore.
That's so awesome. Was it you just looking at colleges that did 3D animation at that point when you're like 12?
Yeah.
Or was it like you continuing to research and learning more about 3D?
It was a little bit of both. Like, when I was looking into the colleges, I really wanted to go to the Academy of Art. Like, I don't know why, I just really liked the Academy of Art for whatever reason. I think it was the name Academy in there. Like, when I was younger, I'm like, oh, yeah, I gotta go there. But
I want to thank the Academy.
The Academy. Another one that really stuck with me was Ringling, which I'm actually really glad I didn't go to either because I met so many great people at Cal State Fullerton. But yeah, I just like tried to look into what 3D was at the time, and it was still really starting to pick up. Like, even if you looked at like the student reels, like I scoured YouTube for people's reels and what they did. And it was really just like, I want to say basic stuff. Like if I looked back at it now, I'd be like, oh, okay, I could probably do that now.
Yeah.
So 3D was just really starting. I don't even think there was like student versions of these programs just yet.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of browsing at that point. It wasn't really like a huge like, this is my dream thing. I was just kind of like settling.
Yeah. That's so interesting though, because we have your mom pushing you toward graphic design and you pushing toward animation, but then Disney kind of, even their 12-year-old self, pulling you toward 3D animation, which is different than how you thought. And yet you embraced it at the same time and were researching it and learning as much as you could about it. So what, and this is a question that I know we kind of talked about it already, but like what kind of helped you like start in 3D?
Well, I think actually when I saw the movie Avatar, the one with
the James Cameron.
Yeah, the James Cameron Avatar, I saw that in the theater 3 times. At the time, that was a huge thing. Like I was obsessed with the soundtrack, the character designs. My brother and I would just sit there in the car and be like, want to hear this music score from the movie? Like, just like seeing that movie, I was like, wow, this is really amazing. Like you can come far with this. So that movie was like, I need to do 3D.
Yeah.
So that movie, I mean, I have plenty that I think surpass it now, but at the time, that really was like, I need to do this.
Oh yeah, I mean, talk about a game-changing movie, you know, like not only 3D animation from Weta, but also like stereoscopic 3D, you know, like like with, you know, for people at home, like 3D glasses at theaters, I feel like has that movie to thank.
Oh my god, for real.
Yeah.
It was an incredible experience. Like I think I saw it in IMAX and just regular, and seeing it in IMAX was just blew it out of the water. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And to think that they're making, is it 4 of them now? Like, is there gonna be 4?
You would probably know more than me.
I think it might even be more, but I'm excited. Even if the story isn't great, just the animation and all of that, I'm excited for.
That's awesome.
Yeah. They really helped me like with like character design stuff and things like that, because I don't know if you've like seen the art book, but like the concept. No. Oh my gosh.
You're like Terrell Whitlatch, right?
Yeah. I don't know if Terrell Whitlatch worked on it, but I wouldn't be surprised. Because her stuff is awesome. I love Terrell Whitlatch.
Yeah, I feel like her stuff, even if she wasn't in the movie, it's like they ripped off of her, I'm sure.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. No, I love Star Wars, like, her work in there. It's so good.
Yeah. Oh, she's amazing. Shout out, Terrell. Yeah, I know you're listening to this.
I don't know you in person, but I love
you. Well, that's cool. So, going from 2D, which I know we talked about some digital programs, and we'll get more into that. But, from 2D, at least this is my experience. I'll talk about me for a second. I might cut this out. But, like, 2D I understood because it was drawing. Mm-hmm. You know, like, oh, you draw on this paper, get another paper, draw on that one. Mm-hmm. Where 3D, it's like you kind of have to know programs, and you kind of alluded to these programs not having student versions at the time you were looking them up. So, how did you even get started with working in a 3D program?
I actually didn't touch anything 3D until I got to Cal State Fullerton.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't have like a really powerful computer, like because for people that don't know, Autodesk Maya is a really, really dense program that takes up a lot of memory on your computer and can crash a lot if you have a weak system. So I really started with it in my first animation class. It was Art 255 with Michael Bonitatis, and I learned everything on the animation pipeline from like the concept art side to modeling, rigging, and animating it. It was a really intense class for someone who had like never opened it like before, but I feel like I learned so much from that class.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is a question that will come up later at the end when we go over Instagram questions.
All right.
But we'll ask it now. I'll paraphrase because we'll ask the real one later. But what are some things in 2D that helped you when transitioning to 3D?
I think something that really helped me was actually just animating in 2D in the beginning. When I was going back to my 12-year-old self, there was a frame-by-frame version in Photoshop before they switched over to the timeline. I think you might actually be able to go back to do it. But I used to just sit there in my room and animate and draw like really, really shoddy drawings. And practicing animation, even if it was like something like that, really helped me. I used to sit in front of the mirror because I tried to do lip syncs.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had my chin on my hand, and I would like talk out the words. And
Yeah,
and
feel it
try to
out.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stared at myself in the mirror. Like my mom would come in. She's like, "Are you okay? What are you doing in here?" I'm like, "I'm animating, Mom. I'm doing a lip sync to Katy Perry's Dark Horse."
And remember how much money I'm gonna make. We talked about
Exactly.
this. Yeah.
Yes. So that definitely helped me because I at least had like a general understanding of how, like, of what animation was, and I also practiced a lot of figure drawing when I was younger too, and I think that helped me. I'm still not like amazing at it, but at least it gives me like an understanding of how far back you can bend the shoulder without it breaking or things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, but for people who are listening for the first time, what is figure drawing and maybe some of those drawing principles that you were learning early on?
So figure drawing is drawing the human figure or human body from life. And something that I try to incorporate in all of my drawings is something called line of action. So I think that's really important to understand as an animator and just an artist in general, because if you don't have a solid line of action, you will have a really stiff pose. So, for example, I'm trying to think of something on the spot here. If somebody is in a jumping pose and you don't really do a nice line of action of what direction that body's going in, you might break them or it might look really wonky. So I think it's it's really important to get a good line of action in your work. Another one I like to do a lot is line weight. Like if you're learning how to draw, I think it's really, really a good idea to just try to pick a line and stick with it, and because that way you'll practice good drawing habits, because you don't want to be just like chicken scratching on the page, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd say that's where I started, the chicken scratch method. But what you're talking about is a solid line that goes through like the character or the image that you're creating, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And for those listening, line weight is like a variation in line thickness and stuff, right?
Yes.
Essentially. So, and I do want to get back into drawing later when we talk about you as the tabler.
All right.
But for now, I want to talk a little bit more about 3D. So, you got to college, you started 3D, you had these 2D fundamentals and stuff. So were you still on that Disney track? Like, all right, I'm going to Disney to be an animator for feature films. Or did things like Avatar or maybe even like video games start to change that direction for you?
Yeah, actually, I used to really want to work at Disney, and then I saw Avatar and I was like, you know what? I really like sci-fi films and monsters and things like that. Why don't I gear towards that? And so after seeing that movie, I was like, you know what? I really want to do films that specialize in like monsters. I want to be a creature animator. Then when I got to college, I learned that a creature animator by itself is a really hard position to come by. And I might get into this later, but when I went to BlizzCon because of a mentor, I met so many great people there that I was like, you know what? I think I could stick with games. Like, because I know I play a lot of games that have really cool creatures and monsters and things like that. So I'm like, that is like right up my alley here. So I'm like, I don't need to go very far. And I think from what I understand, games are a little bit more stable than film anyway. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind working in film if I can get, I mean, I'll take a job if I can get a job on film, but I'm really trying to gear myself towards game animation now.
Oh, that's awesome. So here's a question along those lines. In planning your portfolio as you're working on it now in school, and thanks for taking time, by the way, out of your busy schedule for the podcast.
Stop it.
What are some differences between maybe like a feature animation reel or portfolio versus one for a video game?
For film, you normally want to focus on a lot of character performance. Like, I'm taking a character animation class right now with Professor Pete Michaels. He's awesome. He is a director on Hot Streets right now, and he worked on Rick and Morty and The Simpsons.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
super awesome.
I should say hi to him because I'm at Stupid Buddy right now. Shout out.
Yeah, I'll tell him you said hi.
Yes.
Or you should swing by.
Yes.
But he is really teaching us how to do character performance right now, and that's something that in film reels they really look for because that's something more prominent in film. They really want you to know how to push that character and to make your audience feel something. And as for games, a lot of it, depending on the company, they want to know how you can do cycles, fight sequences, and just looping things. Because when I'm going to talk about BlizzCon a lot.
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Let's do
when
it.
I went to BlizzCon and I got my my reel reviewed, one something that really stuck with me was like, in your free time, if you're going to send us something else, animate a fight sequence between two people and one's bigger than the other and one wins. So like they want to see a lot of body mechanics, but in the category of like action and different ways you can demonstrate weight and technique. So I want to say that the games reels are a little bit different, but they both have the same thing. You need to know what body mechanics are. You need to know a little bit about the program. But I think film and games are a little bit different in terms of the reel. So you can probably put a couple like character pieces in there, but if you're really trying to get in, I would tailor to that specific studio. Like, if you want to work on a MOBA, like League of Legends, which I eventually would love to work at Riot Games, you want to put stuff in there that they'd like to see. Like, Riot Games, because their camera is so up high in the game, they can get away with a lot of unique stuff. Like, for example, I've noticed in a lot of their run cycles, they would translate or just pull up on the axis on their torso. So if you zoom in, you're going to see a torso that's like being stretched up and down and up and down. It's funny. And so many people comment on that, but it's because that's how it works there. So I think part of the reel making is to understand the company you want to work for and how you can tailor to them.
That's awesome. So as you've done, because we've learned about you even from 12 years old, doing a lot of research to really understand what it is that you love and have a passion for. What are the studios around here that you're looking at and some of the things that you've noticed? Like you talked about Riot just now. So what about some other ones?
Some other ones I'd really like to work for include the Sony Santa Monica studio because of God of War. I love God of War.
Yeah.
So good. And also, I think Insomniac Games is another really good one because they kicked butt on Spider-Man. And then I played a lot of their games that they made in the beginning, like they did the first Spyros too. So I really like just the direction they've been in. Granted, Spyro was 15 plus years ago, but still, like, that's in my mind of that company. So yeah, I'd say my top three are probably Riot, Insomniac, and Sony Santa Monica. But Blizzard is also up there too, because I know a lot of nice, awesome people from Blizzard. And I also love Diablo 3. I just can't play it all the time because it takes away from my animation. But I really like them too.
That's awesome. Now, you talked about earlier about in gaming reels how they want cycles and looping. So for people who don't know about animation, how would you describe those?
A cycle is basically an animation that can play over and over again, and you normally wouldn't notice the difference. Like, for example, a running animation the start frame and the end frame theoretically should be the very same thing. So when you're playing a video game, like let's say you're going to play Horizon Zero Dawn, and another great game. And
shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
Yeah.
You're playing as Aloy, the protagonist. You're not gonna really see when her start and end animation are, but you will see the settle when she stops, because that's another loop in there that the game engine's going to put in for you. So basically, a loop is just something that will play over and over again, and it helps the player have a really good game experience.
And then another example, that would be idle animation, right?
Yeah, I love idle animations. I love them so much.
Can you talk about what that is, and then talk about the ones you're doing right now?
So an idle animation is the animation that plays when your character is not moving, whether that be when you've gotten to somewhere in your quest in the game and they just stop, whether you're picking them in the game menu. It's just when they're not moving. And another thing that I really love about idles is the variations or fidgets, depending on who you talk to. And those are the things a lot of people think of when they think of idles. They think, oh, I'm going to shift my weight to my right foot, or I'm going to fall asleep. Those are called idle variations, and those are things that break up your idle so it doesn't look just stagnant and a little bit boring.
Mm-hmm. And you're doing some right now with some of your great characters, right?
Oh, yeah. For my group projects class right now, I am animating a little robot for our game. He is named Stuart. He's just...
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we named him Stuart. So I'm doing a couple animations for him right now. We're doing a VR game for a group projects class. It's like an underwater submarine voyage. And so he's like your companion in the submarine, and he will talk to you and like tell you, oh, look over there at that fish, or something like that. So I just finished the base idle for him right now, and our group leader Sean, he really like wanted a few variations that would be fun. So I did a couple blinks. Blinks are also variations depending on who you talk to, and I'm doing a falling asleep one for that as well.
Oh, nice! That's awesome. And not to mention a certain dinosaur character that you have.
Yeah.
Is your original character. We gotta talk about him.
Okay,
go for it.
Sure. What Ben's referencing is my Velociraptor character, Scraps. He doesn't have a tail. That's like kind of like the defining feature of him. And I think that might be a lot of people's favorite parts, because whenever they see him, there's, I think there's normally like 3 questions. It's 1... why doesn't he have a tail? 2, did you model and rig this? Which the answer is no. I just animated and designed him. And 3 is, why is he purple? So, yeah.
That's what I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, like I have so many people that ask me, why is he purple? But yeah, I really love dinosaurs a lot. And I think I like paleontology. I think it's really cool. I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan. So... when we had to do a character for our pre-production and production film, no matter what anyone told me, I was like, I'm going to do a dinosaur. I don't care what happens. I'm going to do a dinosaur. And so I started designing this dinosaur. And he's a little weird because he doesn't look exactly like a dinosaur. Like, he's got spikes on him and all these different things, but I still like him.
Oh, he's amazing.
Thank you. As I was going through the design process, people were like, Alex, he's got a huge tail. You're going to have to animate that tail. So I'm like, oh, you're right. So what did I do? I just chopped it off. And I'm like, you know what? I should probably think of a backstory for this. So, like, and it ended up being, like, a part of his backstory on how he didn't have a tail. You really have to, like, flesh out your character. Like, you shouldn't make a character and not have a backstory behind him, because you got to understand how this character thinks and how you're going to animate them. And so I had to come up with a backstory of how Scraps didn't have a tail. It's like... the back of him, it has a bone showing. There's like a whole... you can't just leave that out. So the way I made Scraps was that when he hatched from an egg, he was like really greedy and didn't want to share like any food with any of his siblings and packmates. So he kind of ran away, and he had to figure out how to survive on his own. But he was a terrible hunter. Like, just because he didn't have any pack mates to learn how to form hunting habits with and all that. So he ended up stealing food from other dinosaurs. And eventually he got caught. So he butted heads with this dinosaur. It's called the Carnotaurus. It's do you know that dinosaur with like no arms? You know that one with the horns? Yeah, one of those.
Oh my
gosh. They are very fast and they have really strong jaws to make up for their lack of arms. So he grabbed Scraps by the tail and just completely tore his front half of his tail off. And he got away, but now he's got this stump tail. So yeah.
Well, he's also the cutest dinosaur I've ever seen. I love him. So Scraps is amazing, and you designed him. So going back to your original passion of drawing and digital art. So did you start out with him on like sketchbooks, or did you go straight to Photoshop, or how'd you even come up with his design?
So I came up with his design with the very first concept we had to do. We had to do 5 concepts for class, and so he was among 5 of those designs, and I just did a really quick, rough drawing on a Photoshop, actually, and that's how he came to be. But the more I thought about him, the more I wanted to draw him. So I have like half a sketchbook full of scratch drawings. Yeah. So I drew him all the time, and I was just set on him having spikes for some reason. So that was another thing that made him kind of unique, because Velociraptors didn't have spikes, or they weren't purple either. But so it's fine. But
who's to know if they were purple anyway?
That's true. And
that's why I bring him up, because I think he's a beautiful design, and it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, which is your amazing drawing skills, and you continuing to use them today into what I want to get into now, which is you vending at various conventions and stuff, selling your art. So could you talk about that and the places that you've done that?
Yeah, I can. I vended at a couple local little art galleries. I don't know if anyone listening knows of a woman named Eva. She goes by the Instagram title of Critterosity. She's such a gem. Yes. But anyway, she used to curate a little gallery called the Artist Lodge. And I believe she passed that title on to her friend Melissa, I think. Don't quote me. But yeah, so I found out about her gallery when she did the Stranger Things gallery. I don't know if you ever heard, but that was their, I want to say one of their largest ones. And I found it because I just finished Stranger Things, and I was there's a gallery in Anaheim for Stranger Things, and we went, and I met Eva, and I met all the local artists there that were vending. I was I really want to try to do this. So I did 2 of their other shows. It was, one of them was a Monster Mash and Rat Fink gallery, and then the other one was a Cartoon Network tribute gallery. So I both did pieces for those, and you had the option to pay for a vending table. So I went ahead and did that, and that was really, really fun. A lot of the artists are really, really friendly, and a couple of them actually went to our school. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was really nice to network with them there, and I feel it was nice because it's a different change of pace from a big convention. I've vended at a couple fandom conventions. One's in San Jose called Further Confusion, and I want to say it's got maybe 2,000-3,000 people that go. So wow. I mean, it's big, but it's not huge.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of a different atmosphere. You get a lot of people that browse at the bigger conventions, and they'll say I'll come back, or they never come back at all. And the smaller galleries, I noticed that people are really, really into meeting the artist and know what they do, as opposed to as a bigger convention. They're just there oh, I like that sticker of that corgi there. I'm just going to buy that and go. So,
yeah.
So I noticed that the smaller shows are a little more welcoming and homey, and I think I like them a little bit better.
That's awesome. And that is actually kind of my lead up into the next question. So you've done a lot of great drawings, a lot of animals, dogs in particular. And so Now that you've been able to table at all these different events, what's something that you've learned and what's something that you feel like has been really successful?
Something that I've learned is it's really important to get to know your table mates because you never know when you're going to run into them again. Like when I did the Fan Alley Gallery, Artist Lodge Gallery, I met Janet. She's an illustrator. Do you know Janet? I can't remember her last name, unfortunately. But I know her Instagram. It's Pueblo de Janet. Yeah. Like I met her at the Artist Lodge, and she's just a sweetheart. Mm-hmm. And her friend Stephanie Rizzo, just amazing artist. And I wouldn't have met them if I didn't talk to them at this gallery and get really close with them. And another thing that I think is important is when you go to these art shows or like dealing in artist halls or vendor halls, you're going to get people that really just want to complain about your art, like how much it costs. And I think it's important, especially for newer artists, to really just price what you feel is comfortable because a lot of artists are already undercharge. So I think it's like good to be like, no, I won't take any less than this amount of money. So I think it's really important to value yourself when you're dealing at these things too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like that's really good advice because shout out to Eva and the amazing Ground Zero, which has so many good artists. But I almost feel bad paying what I do for the art because I know it's underpriced. You know what I mean? Sometimes I tell my friends even who I'm buying from, I'm like, no, please don't give me a discount because I'm your friend. I want to pay the full price because I know you're already undercutting yourself.
Exactly. Like, I order a lot of art online. Like, I like getting art or commissions of, like, characters, scraps. And a lot of the times, if I can afford it, I'll toss them an extra $5-10 because I'm like, you guys are already undercharging yourself. You're not getting any medical insurance by charging for art, when you have bills to pay, so I'll pay you an extra couple bucks. So I always try to toss people extra money if I can.
That's awesome. And then what's something that has surprised you about conventions in terms of like, whoa, I didn't know people were going to like this so much or something like that?
I actually had scrap stickers at the previous convention I was selling at, and I had made 2 new stickers. One was a corgi. I'll pull you a picture, actually.
Oh, nice.
So it was a corgi face and a corgi butt, like 2 separate stickers, because I thought it would be funny, like if you put one at the top of something and then the butt at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then I had another one that had a T-Rex on it and said, "Get Rexed." And I was like really excited because I was like, I think these are gonna do great. I think they look amazing. And no, I sold maybe like a handful of those stickers, but I almost sold out of my scrap stickers. And I'm like, nobody knows this character. I didn't think, but they're like, this guy's cool. I like him. And they're like, do you have any more stuff of this one? I'm like, no, but thank you.
Yeah,
like,
I will next time. Yeah.
So that really surprised me. But in terms of like general convention stuff, I think you just always have extra business cards because you always think you're going to have enough. You never have enough business cards. Yeah, so I think that's something I learned is just always have an extra 100 or 200 business cards.
That's so awesome. So you've got this amazing illustration and character design work that's both 2D and 3D. You've got your 3D animation, which now you're gearing toward video games. So, since you've done so many things in art, where do you want to take it in the future, and what do you want to do?
I really would want to land a gig at a video game studio. That's, like I said, I really just admire, like, I've met some really nice people in the film industry, too. They're awesome. But I think just the game people I've met are huge geeks, just big geeks, and I'm like, I would fit in. So the ones I've met, that just really, they really inspire me. So I'm like, you know what? I really enjoy, like, playing games. I like watching gameplay of games, because I'm not always the best at video games, but so I'll watch other people play them. But that kind of work in those games is something I'd really want to do. Since I love paleontology, I've been seeing a lot of dinosaur games actually coming out, like a lot of indie ones.
Oh, nice.
I wouldn't mind, like, hopping on one of those to do that. But there's that, and then my boyfriend and I are also working on like just a really simple like fighting game with scraps and the T-Rex from my movie.
Oh
so
my gosh, that's so cool.
I want to finish that. Yeah.
So there's a 3D game.
Yeah.
How does the gameplay go down?
It would basically just be like Pokemon, like, because my boyfriend, he's a computer scientist, so he's coding this for, I think it's Unity, and he's basically just working on, like, the code for, like, the contact or, like, the hit damage and stuff like that. So I'd be doing all the animation for, like, the attacks, like, the idols, stuff that I'm already kind of doing now. So what it would be is just, like, you know, Scraps uses bite or something, and hit damage happens.
The blink white,
or something like that. Yeah, something super simple, but just to say like, hey, we've done it, we know how to do it. So, and any extra chance I get to animate Scraps is pretty good. So
yeah, that's awesome. So I'm glad that he's gonna continue in the future as like kind of your like, I don't know. I almost feel like you'll have to maybe talk about this, but like almost like your. Not mascot, but like kind of your marketing, like character.
Right, yeah.
Like, this guy is me, representing me.
Right,
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like a good example of that is my friend Sarah Fisher. She has this character. She's a cartoon. Yeah, she's actually a cartoon, and it's like a cartoon serval, and his name's Mao, and it's amazing. Like it's like. She animates it like a cartoon, like it's got like stretchy limbs and everything. It's like totally like 90s cartoon, but that's like her brand. So whenever I think of Sarah, I think of Mao, and so it's like I hope people think of dinosaurs or Scraps when they think of me. Like that's just like my angle.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think it's cool too that like we talked about at the beginning, like combining all your loves and the amount of research that you've done too to really understand all this stuff and learn it on your own, so that now you're like practicing it and you're making a business out of it, even vending your art. That's so cool.
Thank you.
So now what I want to talk about is advice that you have for people coming up in the arts. Yes, come in.
Hi.
Hey, Christian's here.
Hello.
Hello. Just in time for the advice section.
The thing I need the most.
Yes. So, Alex, let's start with illustration and drawing. For people who see these amazing drawings that you're putting out of Scraps and your other characters, what advice do you have to help them with drawing?
The first thing I always go to when someone asks me for advice on drawing is, please just draw from life. Like, it sounds like super, super simple, but you will understand form so much better if you draw people walking by, or dogs, or things out in the wild, I guess. So I'm always going to tell people, please do figure drawing. There's this website I always go to. It's called Line of Action, and it's so good. Have you ever used it before? Yeah, it's like a really, really good website. So I will always say practice that, as well as I used to do a line exercise as a kid, and all you would do is just draw the same line over and over and over again, but try to match that thickness. I mean, you'll hate it by line 50, but you know what? Like, that's okay. So that really helped me with my line weight and stuff, especially when I use things like brush pens, because brush pens, you have to be really, really precise with your hand.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the drawing and illustration, but I actually don't want to get away from that too soon, because you do amazing character design. So what's something that's helped you with character design?
I think it's important to find what your inspirations are and try to pull from that. Like I mentioned earlier, Scraps is purple, and the reason he's purple is because I really liked Spyro the Dragon growing up. So I tried to mix those two colors, like you have purple, which is considered good luck, feminine, all that, and with a red color, that means danger. So I think it's important to understand a little bit about color theory when you're designing characters, so you understand what certain colors mean. You don't always have to, but I think it helps a lot. And understand what you're trying to design. Always look up reference. I know a lot of people that are like worried reference is cheating. Reference is not cheating. Animators use it and character designers use it all the time. Please look up something and make your own version of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you're a 3D animator.
Yes.
You're even planning on animating on games yourself, which is super exciting.
Thank you.
For someone who wants to come up doing exactly that, what would your advice be to them?
I am going to say, look into the game studio that you want to work for and tailor your work to that, as well as talk to people who work at that one company. I'm glad I got this question so I can go into this. I had a mentorship program with somebody at Blizzard for a whole semester, and the reason I got it was because I messaged her and I was like, "Hi, I like your work. You came to my school. Do you mind mentoring me?" And she said, "Yeah." And that was it. That was literally it. Yeah, her really, really wonderful woman. Her name's Karina Kingdom. And she's a senior animator at Blizzard. And so for, how long was the semester? Like 4 months? Yeah, 4 months, bi-weekly. She drove to my campus with my, and my friend Rudy and I. Shout out to Rudy Solorzano.
Shout out!
Yeah, we met her every Saturday morning and sat there for about 4 or 5 hours, and she just sat there and was like, "Here's how you fix this in your animation. This is what I would do if I was doing this." And it was all because we asked. So if you want to work for, let's say, Toys for Bob, message somebody from Toys for Bob and be like, "Hey, I really like your work. It also helps if you know what they do." So please
do a little social media stalking ahead of time.
Exactly. Do your research, but please message them and be like, "Hey, I like your work. Would you mind critiquing mine, or can you give me some tips?" Not everybody will get back to you. People are really busy, and I totally understand. But I think that's a good way to break out of your shell, because I know so many of my friends that are like, "Oh, I want to ask people, but I feel like I'm bothering them." I'm like, You're not bothering them. These are people who love what they do and they want to share their knowledge with other people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Super cool.
What advice do you have on actually animating? Like, what's something that's helped you?
That's a big question. Something that helps me animate is shooting reference. Before I do the action, I try to act it out myself, because that's another thing. I don't know why people think reference is cheating. Again, it is not. Please use reference. Like this morning, my professor Andy Fedak, he was looking at my run animation for Stuart the robot, and he's like, "Oh, that's kind of boring. You can do better." So he's like, "Alex, I want you to swing your arms around like this." So what did I do? I walked into the hallway with my friend Alora and did that for 10 seconds, got on video, and now I'm animating that. So I think it really, occasionally you get the art student that's not an animator, and they're like, what are you doing over there? Are you
Those
okay?
fine arts people.
Yeah. Fine artists, but shooting reference is something that's really important. I know a lot of people are afraid of the graph editor in Maya. That's something that's a really big thing. I don't know if have you 3D animated before?
I have, but
okay.
If you could talk about that while you're answering this question.
I totally can, yeah. The graph editor is something that you use to mess with tangents. When you set a key in Maya and you set a keyframe, it makes this little square of data called the tangent. And it's like the ease in and ease out in 2D, except that that's how the computer computes it. And I think it's important to understand what each tangent does, because there's different settings. There's spline, there's linear, there's auto, and each thing does something different for you. And I think it's important to understand what those tangents can do for you before you start animating and just mess with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, all that's super cool. And shout out to Hannah Patrico, who mentioned you in her podcast doing exactly what you just said, which is shooting your reference with Rudy. So that's super awesome. And go check out that episode.
Yeah. Oh, man. Hannah is a legend. I love her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, for people who want to follow your advice, for people who have listened to this and are now interested in looking at your work, where can they find it?
Oh, well, I have an Instagram. It's called Simply Sketching Art, all one word. And then I have a Twitter, which is ss_artwork.
Cool. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so good to finally get you on the podcast. You've been mentioned on before, and it's so good to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me out here, guys.
We're going to ask questions from Instagram.
Instagram questions! So the first one is from, oh man, I'm going to say this wrong.
Just go.
Cosmocon? Ugh,
Nice.
sorry.
I like it.
And the question is, how long did it take you to properly grasp 3D animation?
I'll be honest, I'm still not there yet. But I think it took me about a solid year and a half to start getting my feet on the ground with it. I feel like as an animator, you're never perfect. You're always going to be learning. So that's always something to keep in mind. But I feel a lot better about my work now than I did a year and a half ago when I first opened up Maya.
That's awesome.
Nice.
It's something that we talked about in the podcast, but you can maybe talk on for a second here.
Sure.
Is you started originally doing 2D animation and you moved into 3D. So was that transition pretty hard or was it pretty seamless for you?
I thought it was pretty difficult just because Autodesk Maya has a little bit of a learning curve. So it did take me a little bit, but after about a couple months, I was good to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. All right.
You can do it!
And here's one from our good friend Dash, who's been on the podcast.
Dash!
Shout
Yeah,
out,
buddy!
boy!
He starts with, "Hi, Alex."
Hi, Dash.
His question is, what crossover from drawing helps your 3D skills progress the most?
I feel like a broken record, but figure drawing. Honestly, like, figure drawing has helped me a lot. And something that I actually use a lot is, it's called the grease pencil in Maya. And you can essentially draw over your frames with, like, a stylus or a mouse. So it's important to at least have some fundamental drawing skills, so that way you can bring out what you're trying to do.
Nice.
Sweet.
Nice.
All right, last one.
Oh, we know this guy. And the last question is from a good friend of ours, Arma Puros on Instagram, and he asks, what do you do to boost your creativity if it is lacking?
Something I always like to do is listen to music scores. I love music scores, so if I'm really feeling uninspired, I'll just go and look up like something from like Lord of the Rings, or like another really good one is Star Wars. I really like Duel of the Fates, so I'll listen to that one all the time for like a good solid 5 minutes on repeat, and then and then I'm ready to go.
And then you're
normally,
pumped.
Yeah, normally
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Like I listened to Anakin versus Obi-Wan for like 10 minutes today when I was like, I don't want to animate this robot, and then I listened to that and like, I'm ready to go. I'm good. So,
I could just see you on
Just
like
good.
a just benching it to that song. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes at the gym. Yeah.
Well, Alex, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like I talked about in the podcast, I've been wanting to get you on for a long time because you have amazing work.
Thank you so much.
And so I'm so glad to be able to talk about it with you. And Christian was totally there that whole time.
He was here the whole time.
Every second was me.
Was it all you?
It was all me.
All about you?
I'm very good at voices.
It sounds just like mine, so it's perfect. Yeah. Now, before we end this video, we do want to say, and we said it in the podcast as well, but where can people go to check out your amazing work?
I have an Instagram account at Simply Sketching Art, all one word, and then I've got a Twitter at ss_artwork.
Sweet. And they can see 3D animation, illustration. What else you got on there?
I do a lot of sketches, so you can see sketches on there too. I try to boost a lot of people's work, so you'll see a lot of sharing on that too.
That's awesome.
Do it. Look at it. And be happy.
And I'm glad we were able to share your work on the podcast.
Thank you.
Hey, that was awesome. I'm glad I was there for the whole thing.
Yeah, when you finally showed up. But the whole thing
Ah.
really was awesome. Super grateful for Alex for coming on. And we don't get to say this every time, but super grateful to all the artists that we've had on the podcast. And we have a lot more great ones coming up real soon, right after an amazing event.
If you like all the people who have been on our podcast, come and meet some of them at an amazing event that we are going to be tabling at.
What?
What? I tried to sound like you, it didn't work.
You already
See?
sound like me.
Dang it! I had to just be myself to be you.
Ground Zero Animation Expo. If you didn't hear about it already from this episode, but also from Eva Sawinski's 2-part episodes that we did some time ago, check them out because this event is gonna rock. And at the time that we're putting up this podcast, it's like a week away.
Whoa.
We are gonna be there with Toon Therapy, who we've had members of that animation, I guess you could say studio, kind of startup studio, on the podcast before. They're gonna be tabling with us, and we've got free stickers for everyone.
Well, I love stickers!
So, hope to see you guys there. It's June 8th and 9th, and if you're listening to this some year in the future, it's 2019. So, sorry all you 2020 people. It was last year.
Once you maybe can come see us again.
Ground Zero is an amazing event, but
You don't have to take our word for it.
Please go to the Ground Zero Animation Expo. It's amazing.